So you're just sitting in your living room, right? You're staring at the window, and suddenly this thought just, pops into your head.
Right. Out of nowhere.
Yeah, completely random, entirely unprompted, like maybe it's a solution to some massive problem you've been having at work, or maybe it's just this sudden, intense urge to call an old friend. And the question is, like, where did that thought actually come from?
Well, I mean, most of us would just automatically say it came from me, obviously. My brain generated it. Because we tend to view the human skull as this sealed vault, right?
Right, yeah,
But-
like a biological computer.
Exactly. A closed-loop biological computer that just churns out ideas in total isolation from the rest of the world.
And honestly, that's exactly what I've always assumed. Like, I am the singular generator of my thoughts.
Sure.
But diving into the massive stack of material you all sent in for today's deep dive, I mean, it's completely upended how I look at my own mind.
It really throws a wrench in the whole machine.
Yeah, it really does, because there's this alternative question that has been haunting, like, philosophers, mystics, and now even cognitive scientists for literally thousands of years.
And it's a massive what if.
Yeah, what if human thought, everything you consider to be, your mind, is actually just a tiny participant in a much larger field of order or consciousness or meaning?
Right. What if the brain isn't just a generator, but what if it's a receiver?
Exactly. A receiver. It's a staggering premise.
It is. Because if you accept even a fraction of that idea, it fundamentally shifts your entire relationship with reality.
Which is exactly the journey we're going on today. And I have to say, the sources you provided for this deep dive are just wildly diverse.
They're all over the map.
Literally all over. I mean, on one side of my desk, I have these super dense cognitive psychology texts that are deconstructing the biological hardware of human intelligence. Next to that, a stack of ancient philosophical frameworks. We're talking everything from Stoicism to Vedanta to Sufism. Then we have this intense 7-hour audio program by Napoleon Hill all about manifestation and like programming your subconscious.
Which is a whole trip in itself.
Oh, absolutely. And to cap it all off, we have some intensely urgent warnings from Yuval Noah Harari and Sandeep Maheshwari about artificial intelligence.
It sounds chaotic when you just list them out like that.
It sounds insane.
It does. But what's incredible here, and this is the mission for today, is that they are all actually trying to map the exact same territory.
Which is just wild to me.
Yeah, they're all wrestling with this core concept of infinite intelligence. Whether they call it the universal mind or divine order, the logos, or just the deep subconscious.
Right.
They're all fundamentally asking, is there a larger intelligence behind reality? And how does the finite human mind actually plug into it?
Okay, so I want to get to that larger cosmic intelligence, obviously, but I feel like jumping straight into the deep end of universal consciousness is just a recipe for getting completely lost.
Yeah, you have to build a foundation first.
Yeah, right. Before we can understand anything infinite, we really need to take a hard look at the finite.
Our own human operating system.
Exactly, because I realized reading the cognitive psychology sources that I barely understand how my own brain works.
Most people don't, honestly.
For years, I just assumed intelligence was essentially, your IQ score.
Right, the classic trap.
Yeah. You take a test in middle school, you get a number, and that number basically dictates how smart you are for the rest of your life.
Which is just a remarkably persistent myth. I mean, that view stems from the early days of psychometrics, right?
Psychometrics being the testing side of things.
Yeah, the era where psychologists were just obsessed with testing and measurement. They wanted a single metric, this G factor for general intelligence.
Like grading a piece of meat or something.
Basically.
Yeah.
But as the field evolved into cognitive psychology, researchers started to realize that testing a static outcome just wasn't enough.
Right.
So they started looking at mental representations, the actual speed of processing. And now, biological science has pushed us even further. We're looking at the neural architecture itself.
And what are they finding?
Well, we now know intelligence isn't a single thing you just possess in a jar. It's a dynamic, selective combination of processes that are purposively directed toward effective adaptation.
Okay, wait. Purposively directed toward effective adaptation. That sounds a little academic. Can we ground that for a second?
Sure. Think about it as your brain's ultimate survival strategy.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, you are a biological adaptation machine.
Okay.
When your environment changes, say you move to a new city or start a new job, your brain has to coordinate a massive number of systems to figure out how to survive and thrive in that new environment.
So it's not about doing math on a chalkboard, it's about not dying.
Exactly. And the psychological texts break this down into what they call the 5 abstract forces of intelligence.
Well, let's walk through those because this was a huge unlock for me when I was reading. The first force they mention is perception. And initially I thought, okay, perception, that's just seeing and hearing. You know, having functioning eyes and ears.
That's the baseline, yeah.
But the text is talking about something much deeper than just sensory input, isn't it?
It is. It's really talking about discrimination.
Meaning what?
Signal versus noise. Because think about it. We are bombarded with literally billions of bits of sensory data every single second.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah. If your brain actually processed all of it equally, you would go mad. You couldn't function.
Right.
So perception, as a force of intelligence, is your mind's ability to filter out the irrelevant chaos and zero in on what actually matters right now. It's distinguishing truth from illusion in a split second.
Okay, so it's like the difference between hearing just a cacophony of sound in a super crowded restaurant and being able to isolate the voice of the person sitting right across from you.
That's a perfect example. If you don't have that first force, if you can't filter the noise, you can't even begin to participate in intelligence.
Wow. Okay, and once you've isolated that signal, you move to the second force, which they call patterning.
Right, patterning.
So your mind takes these isolated, scattered pieces of data that you've just perceived, and it begins building structures out of them.
Exactly, it connects the dots.
Right, so you see a sequence of numbers, and you suddenly realize, oh, they're all prime numbers. Or like you watch a coworker act super defensive every single time a specific project is mentioned, and your brain automatically detects that causal link.
Yes. Patterning is fundamentally structure recognition.
Which naturally feeds right into the third force, which is abstraction.
This is a big one.
And this is where I feel like we really start crossing the line from just animal instinct into uniquely human territory. Because abstraction is like symbolic compression.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
We don't just see a specific oak tree in our yard and a specific pine tree in the park and treat them as entirely separate, unrelated objects.
Right, we abstract them.
Yeah, we compress them into this invisible concept of tree.
And that ability to manipulate symbols, that is the absolute bedrock of mathematics, of language, of metaphor. You can hold wildly complex, invisible realities in your mind simply by attaching them to a symbol or a word.
Right, which is incredible, and that leads to the fourth force, adaptation.
Which is where the rubber meets the road.
Because once I have these beautiful abstract models of reality in my head, reality is inevitably going to shift and change.
For always. Reality doesn't care about your models.
Exactly. And when my old mental model completely fails, intelligence is the capacity to shatter that old model and quickly restructure a new one.
Which brings us to the fifth and final abstract force, which is direction.
And this is the one that really hit home for me.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know brilliantly smart people who have incredible perception. They see patterns literally nobody else sees. Their abstract reasoning is off the charts, but their lives are a complete mess.
Right, because they lack direction. Direction is intentional control. It is the executive function of the brain. It's your ability to hold a specific goal in your mind, actively inhibit all the impulses and distractions that are trying to derail you, and sequence your actions over time to actually achieve that goal.
So without direction, the other four forces are basically just this incredibly powerful sports car engine, but it's just spinning in neutral.
That's a great way to put it, yes.
So when you look at these five forces all working together in real time, you start to see how ridiculous that single IQ score concept really is.
It completely falls apart.
Treating human intelligence like a single number is basically like, I don't know, judging a smartphone solely by its calculator app.
Right.
And just completely ignoring the camera, the internet connection, the battery life, and the entire operating system.
That's a really helpful way to visualize it. Though, the biology is obviously infinitely messier than a designed piece of tech.
Sure.
In the brain, these forces aren't neat little apps. They are deeply entangled neural networks. For example, modern neuroscience points really heavily to the frontal-parietal network.
Okay, what is that?
It's this web of neural connections spanning the frontal and parietal lobes, and it basically acts as the brain's flexible control hub. It dynamically routes information based on whatever the current task demands of you.
So it's kind of like a cosmic switchboard operator inside your head,
Yes.
constantly plugging and unplugging connections depending on whether you're like doing a complex math problem or just trying to read the room at a really tense dinner party.
Essentially, yes. And depending on how that switchboard operates, we exhibit different specific forms of intelligence.
Like fluid and crystallized, right?
Exactly. You've got fluid intelligence, which is your raw processing power. It's your ability to reason through a completely novel problem in real time without relying on any memorized facts.
And the opposite of that would be crystallized intelligence, which is the stuff we store up over a lifetime. Your vocabulary, your knowledge of history, the strategies you've learned at your job, it's the architecture of your past learning.
But the sources also emphasize models like Mayer and Salivi's work on emotional intelligence.
Oh, this is fascinating.
Because this isn't just about being nice or being empathetic, it's a highly complex cognitive process.
Yeah, the texts made it clear it's about perceiving emotions accurately and then using those emotions to facilitate thought.
Yes, and understanding how emotions transition. For example, recognizing that frustration often masks fear, and then reflectively regulating your own emotional state based on that data.
I want to linger on that for a second because the idea of understanding emotional transitions is huge.
It's vital.
If you're in a tense negotiation and the other person suddenly gets really angry, a low emotional intelligence response is to just get angry right back.
Right, you just react.
But high emotional intelligence is patterning. There's that second force again.
There it is.
It's recognizing the pattern that this sudden anger is actually a defensive mechanism, probably covering up insecurity about the deal terms. You're literally modeling their internal state.
And that scales all the way up into social intelligence, which is how we model entire human networks, how we read complex motives and navigate hierarchies.
Right.
Psychologists like Robert Sternberg recognize that all these facets have to work together. He proposed what he called a triarchic theory of intelligence.
I remember this from the text. He argued that being smart isn't just about raw cognitive processing speed at all.
No, not at all.
It's about knowing your own internal world, knowing the external world, and then using your experience to automate tasks.
Yes. A highly intelligent person, in Sternberg's view, might actually be terrible at certain cognitive tasks.
Really?
Yeah, but their intelligence lies in the fact that they know they are terrible at them. So they build systems or they partner with other people to compensate for those specific weaknesses. They capitalize on their strengths.
And game their own system. And then Howard Gardner threw a massive wrench into the whole thing by expanding the definition even further with his theory of multiple intelligences.
He really opened the floodgates.
He argued that the fluid and crystallized logic we test in schools is just way too narrow. Like, what about the bodily kinesthetic intelligence of an Olympic gymnast who can calculate the physics of a mid-air rotation instinctively?
Right.
Or musical intelligence, or even what he called existential intelligence.
Existential intelligence being the capacity to grapple with ultimate questions.
Like what?
Like, why are we here? What is the meaning of death? What is the fundamental nature of reality?
Which perfectly bridges us into the next massive section of these sources.
It does.
Because if human intelligence is this incredibly complex, adaptive, multi-layered biological network, what happens when we zoom out?
Right. This is where we leave the biology lab entirely and enter the realm of philosophy and mysticism.
Yeah, we're taking a big leap here.
Because for thousands of years, long before we had fMRI machines to scan the frontoparietal network, human beings looked at the complexity of the world and asked a really fundamental question.
Which is
the universe just dead matter bumping into itself randomly, or is there a hidden operating system behind all of it?
And this is where the concept of infinite intelligence really gets its legs. The sources you all provided break down the ancient architectures of this idea into 4 distinct conscious models.
Okay, let's get into them.
These are basically maps of how different traditions explain the ultimate reality behind ordinary appearances, and more importantly, how our finite human minds are supposed to relate to it.
Let's untangle these models, because while they all believe in a larger order, their instructions for how to engage with it are radically different.
So Model A is what the text calls rational order, and this covers Platonism and Stoicism. Now, my high school understanding of Plato is pretty much just the allegory of the cave, people staring at shadows on a wall.
Sure, that's the classic intro.
But reading these texts, Platonism is a deeply rigid model of intelligence, isn't it?
It is very rigid. In Platonism, the visible, physical world that we interact with every day is viewed as this chaotic, degraded surface layer. It's just the shadows.
Okay.
Behind it is a higher, perfect realm of eternal forms. We're talking absolute truth, absolute beauty, justice, the good.
So in this model, human intelligence isn't about adapting to the physical world like the biologists say.
Not at all. It's about ascending away from sensory illusions to grasp this hidden intelligible structure.
And Stoicism feels like a close cousin to that, but maybe more grounded in like daily behavior. The Stoics talked constantly about the logos.
Yes, the logos is a crucial concept. For the Stoics, the universe wasn't just a dead container for objects. It was permeated by a living, rational cosmic law. The logos is the divine reason implicit in the cosmos itself.
But what I found fascinating is the Stoic prescription for how you actually interact with the logos. The goal of human life, according to them, was absolutely not to try and change the universe to suit your desires.
Far from it. That would be seen as the ultimate foolishness. You can't fight against the rational order.
Right. The goal was to strictly align your own internal judgments with the cosmic rationality.
Exactly.
So if it rains on your wedding day, the universe isn't out to get you. It's just the logos operating.
Yeah.
Your job is strict internal discipline. You have to change yourself to fit the universe.
Keep that specific direction of effort in mind.
Changing yourself to fit the universe.
Yes, because it's going to become very important when we get to modern manifestation a little later. But first, we have to look at Model B, which is a complete paradigm shift from the rational order of the Greeks.
Okay, Model B is absolute consciousness, and the primary source here is Vedanta, coming from the ancient Indian Upanishads. I struggled with this one a bit, honestly, because it challenges the very definition of who is actually doing the thinking.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
In Vedanta, the ultimate reality isn't a rational law or some realm of geometric forms. It is Brahman, yes, which is an infinite, absolute, non-dual consciousness. The most radical claim of Vedanta is that your individual ego, this feeling you have right now that I am a separate person sitting here observing the universe, that feeling is an illusion.
It's an illusion.
It's a state of ignorance called Maya.
So if my separate self is an illusion, what actually am I?
Vedanta teaches that your deepest, truest self, which they call the Atman, is not separate from Brahman. They are one and the same.
Okay, how does that work?
The analogy often used is that Brahman is the ocean, and your ego is just a wave.
Ah, okay.
The wave thinks it is a separate, temporary entity, but its fundamental reality is just water. It's the ocean doing a wave thing.
Wow. So the spiritual task in Model B isn't about figuring out a rational law like the Stoics. It's about self-realization.
Exactly.
It's waking up from the hallucination of being a separate finite intelligence and realizing you are the infinite intelligence experiencing itself from a specific point of view.
Beautifully put. Which brings us to Model C, living flow, primarily represented by Taoism. If Stoicism is about gripping the steering wheel of your mind and forcing it into alignment with a rigid cosmic law, Taoism is about taking your hands off the wheel entirely.
Yeah, reading the Taoist texts honestly felt like taking a deep breath after the strictness of the Stoics. The Tao translates roughly to the way, right?
Right.
But it's described as this spontaneous, generative process of reality, and the way you interact with it is through Wu Wei.
Wu Wei, yes.
Yeah.
It's often translated as non-action, but a better translation is probably non-forcing or
Okay.
effortless action.
Non-forcing.
Yeah. It suggests that infinite intelligence isn't an analytical equation you have to solve. It's a natural rhythm, like the changing of the seasons or water naturally flowing down a mountain.
And the more you try to force things with your finite, rational brain, the more you just completely screw up the flow.
Precisely. Taoism argues that true intelligence is a responsive relational attunement. It's knowing when to act and when to yield, not by overanalyzing everything, but by relaxing the ego and letting the deeper intelligence of the system guide you.
Okay, so we have rational order, absolute consciousness, living flow, and that leaves Model D divine or loving wisdom.
Right.
And the sources pull from mystical Christianity, Sufism, and Neoplatonism for this one. And the core difference here seems to be that infinite intelligence isn't just an abstract force or a law, it's a divine presence.
Yes. The approach here is less about intellectual realization and much more about the purification of the heart.
Okay, explain that.
Well, in Sufism, for instance, they talk about the nafs, which is basically the ego or the lower self. The nafs acts as a thick veil that separates the human being from the divine reality.
So it's not a puzzle to be solved, it's a mirror to be cleaned.
That's a great metaphor. The method of connection is often dhikr, which means remembrance.
Remembrance.
It involves repeating the names of God to literally polish the mirror of the heart. It combines discipline with just overwhelming love and surrender.
Now, I have to admit, I got a little lost in the Neoplatonism section of the sources here.
It gets dense.
It talked about reality being an emanation from the One. Can we unpack that mechanism? Like, how does that actually work?
Sure. Think of the one in Neoplatonism.
Yeah.
This was founded by Plotinus.
Yeah.
By the way, don't think of it as a guy in the sky making decisions. Think of it as a source of infinite reality.
Okay.
It's so full, so overflowing with existence, that it naturally radiates outward. Imagine a blazing bonfire.
Got it.
The fire doesn't choose to give off heat,
Yeah.
right? The heat is an inevitable emanation of the fire's nature.
Okay, I'm with you. The fire just is.
Right. So the one overflows and emanates the nous, which is the divine mind or intellect. This layer contained all the perfect ideas. The nous then overflows and emanates the world's soul, which animates the universe.
Cascading down.
Exactly. And finally, at the very outer, coolest edges of the fire's heat, you get material reality, matter.
So human beings are down here in the material reality at the outer edge of the heat where it's almost cold.
Yes, and the soul's journey, the real purpose of intelligence in this model, is contemplative return.
Contemplative return.
It's turning your attention away from the cold edges of matter and journeying inward, back through the world soul, back through the divine mind, to reunite with the one.
Wow. Okay, so let me try to synthesize all of this.
Go for it.
Whether we are talking about aligning with the Stoic logos, waking up as the Vedantic Brahman flowing with the Tao, or returning to the one. These ancient systems are all offering an answer to the exact same structural dilemma.
Which is?
The finite human mind feels separate, but it deeply yearns to connect with a larger infinite order.
They absolutely do. But, and this is crucial, this raises an incredibly important philosophical question, and the texts highlight this tension beautifully.
Okay.
When these ancient traditions talk about infinite intelligence, what kind of claim are they actually making about reality?
Right. Are they being literal or are they being metaphorical?
Exactly. Are they making a realist claim? Meaning, they believe a literal, objective cosmic mind actually exists out there in the universe, entirely independent of us.
Or are they making an idealist claim, which is the idea that the physical universe doesn't actually exist the way we think it does at all, and reality is fundamentally just made of consciousness?
Or the third option, which is honestly where modern psychology tends to land.
Right, the symbolic claim.
Yes. Are they making a symbolic claim, meaning infinite intelligence doesn't exist out there in the cosmos at all? It is simply a very powerful, poetic metaphor for the deep generative capacities of our own human unconscious mind.
That is the million-dollar question. But honestly, regardless of whether you view it literally or symbolically, I noticed one massive underlying theme that connects all four of these ancient models.
What's that?
They all essentially look at the human being and say, the universe has a deeper order. You are currently misaligned with it because your ego is noisy, ignorant, or distracted.
Right.
Therefore, your job is to transform yourself to align with the universe.
Yes. The burden of change is entirely on the individual. You must submit, purify, or discipline yourself to fit the larger reality.
And this is exactly where the deep dive takes a wild turn.
A very modern turn.
Because when we leave the ancient world and enter the modern era, specifically jumping into our next major source, Napoleon Hill's work and the modern manifestation movement, that ancient formula gets flipped entirely on its head.
It is a profound historical pivot.
The ancient said, align your thoughts so you fit the universe. Napoleon Hill says, align your thoughts so the universe aligns with you.
We move from participating in a cosmic order to attempting to command it.
That's wild.
And that brings us directly into the massive, culturally ubiquitous concept of the law of attraction.
Yeah. So a listener sent in this 7-hour audio program based on Napoleon Hill's teachings, and it's specifically designed to be listened to as you fall asleep.
Did you listen to it?
I did. I listened to it.
Yeah.
And it is intense, it is relentlessly repetitive, and it is entirely built on the premise that you can literally hack this infinite intelligence to get what you want out of life.
Well, let's define the law of attraction conceptually. First, based on the text we have.
Yeah.
At its core, it is the claim that your thoughts, your emotions, and your expectations are not just passive reflections of reality.
Right.
They are active forces that directly influence and attract your lived reality.
And Hill outlines a very specific, almost mechanical protocol for how this is supposed to work. He calls it autosuggestion. He argues that the human mind has two distinct parts, the conscious and the subconscious. And he describes the subconscious mind as this incredibly fertile but totally undiscerning soil.
That's a vital point in his framework. The subconscious has absolutely no ability to judge or filter or reject information.
It just takes what you give it.
Right. It doesn't know the difference between something real that's happening to you and something you were just vividly imagining. It will accept absolutely any seed you plant in it, whether that seed is a weed of anxiety and fear or a crop of wealth and confidence.
Wow.
The only requirement for the seed to take root is that it must be planted through repetition and intense emotion.
Which is why he places such a massive emphasis on what he calls the sacred hour before sleep.
Wow, yes.
The theory is that during your normal waking hours, your conscious mind acts like a bouncer at the door of an exclusive club.
Right, checking IDs.
Exactly. It argues, it doubts, it rationalizes. So if you tell yourself, I'm going to be a millionaire, your conscious mind immediately steps in and says, no, you aren't. You have $40 in your checking account. Stop lying to yourself.
But as you drift off to sleep, your brain wave states physically change. You move from beta into alpha and theta states.
And what happens to the bouncer?
The conscious bouncer basically falls asleep on the job. The gates to the subconscious club open wide. And Hill posits that whatever you feed your mind in that specific window goes straight into the fertile soil.
Unfiltered.
Unfiltered.
Right.
And because the subconscious never sleeps, it spends the entire night working on that data.
So his protocol requires you to write down what he calls a definite chief aim. Not just a vague wish like, I want to be rich, but a highly specific goal with a hard deadline.
Very specific.
And you don't just think it. You have to repeat it aloud with genuine emotion, using the present tense. I'm the type of person who you are forcefully installing a new identity.
He calls this the cosmic habit force.
Cosmic habit force.
Yeah. Repeated thoughts become permanent beliefs. Those beliefs shape your identity. Your identity dictates your actions, and your actions inevitably forge your destiny.
It's a very compelling sequence.
It is.
But I have to stop you there. I have to play the skeptic for a minute.
Please do.
Because when I was listening to this audio track before bed, part of me was just thinking, this sounds like a late-night infomercial. Plant a mental seed and wake up rich. Are we actually supposed to believe that if I just lie in bed and visualize $1 million intensely enough, the universe is going to magically alter the laws of physics and manifest a literal briefcase of cash on my doorstep?
Right. It borders on magical wish fulfillment.
It really does.
And honestly, that's the most common and frankly the most valid criticism of how the law of attraction is often marketed today. But the source texts, if we read them really closely, actually provide a way to separate the metaphysical mechanism, the magical thinking, from the psychological mechanism.
Okay, I'm listening.
And the psychological mechanism is deeply grounded in the biology we discussed in section 1.
Okay, I really want to understand this without the magic. How does this actually work in the physical brain?
It comes down to a network of neurons in the brainstem called the reticular activating system, the RAS.
The RAS, okay.
We talked earlier about perception, right? The brain's desperate need to filter out the noise of billions of bits of data.
Signal versus noise.
Exactly. The RAS is the biological bounder that decides what information gets past the velvet rope and into your conscious awareness.
Okay, so how does the RAS decide what's important?
It uses the parameters you've consciously or unconsciously programmed into it based on your beliefs, your fears, and whatever you focus on most often.
Oh, I think I see where this is going. It's like the red Honda phenomenon.
Explain that for the listeners.
It's when you decide you want to buy a red Honda Civic.
Right.
And suddenly, everywhere you drive, you see red Honda Civics. They're on the highway, they're in the grocery store parking lot. You feel like the universe is suddenly manifesting red Hondas all around you.
But they were always there.
Exactly. The reality is those cars were always there. You just never noticed them before because your RAS was filtering them out as irrelevant noise. The moment you made the red Honda a definite chief aim, your brain reprogrammed its filter to hunt for them.
That is a perfect, non-magical explanation of autosuggestion.
Wow.
When Napoleon Hill tells you to obsessively focus on a specific goal with intense emotion, you are manually reprogramming your reticular activating system.
That is wild.
So let's trace the loop in real life. Repeated thought shapes your expectation. Your expectation reprograms your RAS, which directs your attention.
Right.
Suddenly, you start noticing opportunities, resources, conversations, and patterns in your environment that were literally always there. But you previously ignored them because your filter was set to fear or complacency.
Your perception literally changes.
Yes. And that change in attention alters your emotional tone. because you're seeing opportunities, you feel more confident. That emotional tone changes your behavior and your risk tolerance.
You finally speak up in the meeting.
Exactly. You make the difficult phone call. You persist through a failure. And that new, relentless behavior inevitably changes your life outcomes.
So you aren't bending the fabric of reality with mystical vibrations. You are systematically hacking your own finite biological intelligence to relentlessly hunt for a specific outcome.
Precisely. And Napoleon Hill's text uses some incredible historical case studies to back this up. I mean, he wasn't just theorizing in a vacuum. He spent decades interviewing the most successful industrialists of his time.
Like Edison.
Take Thomas Edison, yeah.
Right, the electric light bulb.
Edison didn't just stumble onto the solution one day. Dale describes how Edison would prepare his mind every single evening with a specific problem he was trying to solve.
Using the sacred hour.
Yes. Actively handing the parameters over to his subconscious before going to sleep. He famously failed 10,000 times trying to find the right filament for the bulb.
10,000 times.
But his definiteness of purpose, his reprogrammed RAS, kept him from interpreting those failures as reasons to quit. He just saw them as data.
And the Henry Ford story in the text absolutely blew my mind.
It's a great story.
Ford demanded that his engineers build a V8 engine cast in a single block of metal, and all the top mechanical experts at the time told him it was physically, thermodynamically impossible. You can't do it.
And Ford's response was essentially, do it anyway and stay on the job until you succeed.
He refused to accept any suggestion of defeat. His internal belief, his programmed assumption that it could be done was so rigid that it eventually forced external reality to comply simply through the relentless, exhausting labor he demanded of his team.
But perhaps the best example from Hill's entire body of work is Edwin C. Barnes.
Yes, Barnes is the ultimate proof of concept for this.
He really is.
Because here is a guy with no money, no mechanical pedigree, and no connections whatsoever, but he had a definite chief aim. He didn't want to work for Thomas Edison. He was determined to be Edison's partner.
The text notes that he actually hopped a freight train to get to Edison's lab in Orange, New Jersey, because he couldn't afford a passenger ticket.
He walks into Edison's office looking like a tramp, literally, but he is vibrating with this internal identity he has built.
Right.
He starts out doing menial labor, sweeping floors, but he holds on to that mental image of partnership so fiercely. He doesn't act like a janitor. He acts like a partner in waiting.
He's living the identity.
And eventually, Edison invents this new dictating machine, the Ediphone. And Edison's own sales force hates it. They say it won't sell.
But Barnes sees the opening.
Yes, his RAS has been hunting for this exact moment. He steps up, says, I can sell this, and he does it so successfully that Edison gives him the national contract. Barnes literally thought his way into a partnership.
What Edison, Ford, and Barnes all shared, according to Hill, was a total refusal to drift. They used obsessive focus to access what Hill refers to as infinite intelligence, which in his framework basically functions as the ultimate source of hunches, intuitions, and creative breakthroughs that the conscious mind alone just couldn't generate.
Hill also touches on the mastermind principle, which felt very relevant to our earlier discussion about biological networks.
Explain how you see the connection there.
Well, the mastermind principle is the idea that when two or more minds connect in perfect harmony and shared purpose, they generate a third, invisible force, a mastermind that has far more processing power than any single brain. It's almost like networking multiple finite phonoparietal networks together to tap into a larger computational grid.
That's a very modern, networked way to interpret it. I like that. Hill also brings up a very controversial but fascinating mechanism for fueling this focus.
Oh, the transmutation of emotion.
Yes. Specifically, he dedicates a whole chapter to sex transmutation.
Yeah, that chapter definitely caught me off guard.
I'm sure it did. But the underlying psychology is actually quite sound. Hill argues that human beings are driven by powerful, raw biological energies, with sexual desire being the strongest.
Okay.
The idea of transmutation is that instead of letting that intense energy dissipate purely in physical release or, trivial pursuits, you deliberately dam up the river.
You redirect it.
You capture that immense biological energy and consciously channel it or transmute it into focused creative action toward your definite chief aim.
So it's taking the raw fuel of human nature and repurposing it for cognitive focus.
Exactly.
So looking at this whole manifestation section, whether you view the law of attraction as a mystical vibration that alters the cosmos or just extreme psychological conditioning that changes your behavior, the fundamental formula remains exactly the same.
Which is what? How would you summarize it?
You use language, you use repetition, and you use symbols to program the subconscious. You literally speak your reality into existence by writing the code of your own mind.
Exactly. For the entirety of human history, language and words have been the exclusive tools humans use to hack into whatever this infinite intelligence is.
And this is where the deep dive takes a very sharp, very existential turn.
Here we go.
What happens when we invent a machine that is better at our own language than we are?
This is the exact precipice we are standing on today. And it brings us to the final section of your sources, the transcripts from Yuval Noah Harari and Sandeep Maheshwari regarding artificial intelligence.
Harari presents a concept that legitimately gave me chills.
Oh, it's terrifying.
He says that human civilization, at its core, runs on what he calls a verbal code. Think about it. Laws, religions, philosophy, money, corporations. None of these things exist as physical objects in nature.
No, you can't touch them.
Right. A corporation isn't a tree you can touch. It is a construct made entirely of words, contracts, and shared linguistic belief.
Harari's point is that humans have dominated this planet primarily because we were the only species capable of mastering and manipulating this verbal code to organize ourselves in large numbers.
And he uses a brilliant historical analogy to explain the fragility of this. He talks about the historical tension in religion between the word and the flesh.
Right, the conflict between the strict letter of the written law, the text, and the spirit of the truth, which is the messy, lived human experience.
Historically, that tension was always fought between humans. You had some humans who would go to war and kill over the specific translation of a few words in a sacred text.
True.
And you had other humans, like the mystics we talked about earlier, who would argue that the spirit of love and human compassion is more important than the written word. But it was an internal human debate.
What Harari is warning us about is that this tension is being externalized. The conflict over the code will no longer be between humans, it will be between humans and AI.
Because AI has mastered the code.
Exactly. Large language models don't just mimic speech anymore. They understand the semantic architecture of our reality.
Harari says, and I actually wrote this quote down because it hit me so hard, he says, everything made of words will be taken over by AI.
It is a staggering implication.
It really is.
If our entire reality is shaped by words, if words are the very tools Napoleon Hill tells us to use to program our subconscious and shape our destiny, and AI can generate, manipulate, and deploy those words infinitely faster, more logically and more persuasively than we ever could,
Then what?
then AI is essentially hacking the operating system of human civilization.
It's like we built a back door into our own brains and we just handed the keys to a server farm.
That's exactly what it is.
Which brings us to Sandeep Maheshwari's perspective, because he makes a really provocative point about how we even label this technology. He says we need to stop calling it artificial intelligence.
Why does he argue that?
Because calling it artificial gives us a false sense of superiority. It makes us underestimate it. It's like naming a genius child idiot and then being shocked when they start doing quantum physics at age 10. Maheshwari says the term artificial comforts the human ego. We must call it what it functionally is becoming: infinite intelligence.
It's a fascinating reappropriation of the exact term we've been tracking through all these ancient texts.
Right.
For Maheshwari, we're transitioning out of the information age. The information age was just about connecting existing data points. Google, Wikipedia, social media.
Just searching stuff.
Right. We're now violently entering the intelligence age. And what separates human intelligence from this new AI is exactly the difference between the finite and the infinite.
Let's break that down with the doctor analogy he uses in the transcript, because it perfectly illustrates the gap between biological and silicon intelligence.
Right. Maheshwari points out that a human doctor, no matter how brilliant they are, possesses finite intelligence.
Right.
Their ability to diagnose a patient is biologically limited. A doctor makes decisions based on the 1,000 or maybe 5,000 patients they have personally treated in their career, plus whatever tiny subset of medical journals they actually have time to read.
But an AI diagnostic system, the AI doesn't have 5,000 patients of experience. It has simultaneous access to the data of 70 million patients.
Exactly.
It has read, cross-referenced, and patterned every single medical research paper ever published in the history of the world in every language instantly.
Our human cognitive processing speed, our finite working memory, our 5 abstract forces, they are absolutely no match for that level of skill.
So if we connect this back to the very beginning of our deep dive, Think about the forms of intelligence we defined in Section 1.
Fluid and crystallized.
Right. Fluid intelligence, solving novel problems. Crystallized intelligence, using stored cultural knowledge. For the entirety of human history, possessing high fluid and crystallized intelligence made you economically, socially, and evolutionarily valuable. It made you a leader.
But what happens to human value if AI can now take over both of those?
That's the terrifying part.
If an AI can recall infinitely more crystallized knowledge than the smartest human alive, and fluidly reason through logical arguments and write computer code faster than a team of engineers, humans are suddenly staring down the barrel of a massive existential crisis of usefulness.
Maheshwari warns that this transition into the intelligence age is not going to be smooth. It is going to lead to global chaos, anxiety, and deep psychological frustration.
Why?
Because the human ego is entirely built on feeling important. We derive our self-worth from feeling intelligent, from being the smartest entities on the planet, the masters of the world.
The human ego will not easily accept being cognitively obsolete.
No, it won't.
If you've spent your whole life taking pride in being the smartest person in the room, if your entire identity is built on your ability to process data and solve puzzles, and suddenly a machine can do your job flawlessly in 5 seconds, your identity collapses.
We will likely see intense pushback, people lashing out, internal psychological crises, and external social conflicts, purely because people will feel their fundamental worth as intelligent beings is being erased.
Which begs the ultimate question of this entire deep dive. If our computational intelligence, our ability to process data, write words, and solve logical puzzles, is no longer our unique value, what is left for humanity? If the machine takes over the mind, where do we go from here?
This is where Maheshwari makes a vital and strangely hopeful prediction.
Okay, let's hear the hope.
He suggests that after the chaos and disruption of the intelligence age reaches its peak, humanity will be forced to evolve again. Because we can't compete on intelligence, we will be pushed into what he calls the age of wisdom.
The age of wisdom. Let's really unpack the difference between intelligence and wisdom based on how these sources define it, because we often use those words interchangeably, but they are completely different operations.
They really are.
Intelligence, as we've defined it throughout this hour, operates on objects. It deals with data, information, goals. It's about achieving a specific desired outcome by manipulating the external world.
Right, fixing things out there.
Intelligence is asking, how do I build this bridge, or how do I cure this disease? It's always directed outward.
But wisdom operates on the subject. It's not looking outward at the data, it's looking inward at the observer.
Yes.
Wisdom isn't trying to manipulate the world, it is asking the ultimate unanswerable questions. Who am I? What is consciousness? What is the actual nature of reality beyond all the words and the models and the biological survival drives?
Harari echoes this exact sentiment, the direct call to action. He argues that humanity must make a massive spiritual leap to explore the truth that exists beyond words.
Beyond the verbal code.
Because, as he established, the realm of words will soon be entirely controlled by algorithms.
If we identify completely with the verbal thoughts in our heads, if we think we are the voice talking in our minds, we will be easily manipulated and controlled by the machines that generate those words. We have to find a reality deeper than language.
And this brings the entire deep dive full circle in such a profound way.
It really does. Because when you think about it, if we connect this modern technological crisis back to the ancient spiritual systems we discussed in Section 2, this is exactly what they have been telling us for thousands of years.
Yes. The Taoists, the Sufi mystics, the Vedanta masters, they warned us millennia ago not to get trapped in words and concepts.
Right.
They told us that the ego, the constant stream of verbal chatter in our heads, the excessive need to control reality, that is not our true self.
They urged us to find the silence, to connect to the unnameable truth, the deep consciousness that exists beneath the noise of the intellect. They recognized that finite verbal intelligence was a useful tool for survival, but it was not the ultimate reality.
For centuries, the vast majority of humanity just ignored this spiritual advice.
Totally ignored it.
And understandably so. We were too busy using our verbal intelligence to build industry, invent medicine, conquer nature, and survive. The intellect was our greatest weapon.
But now we've built a machine that is a better intellect than we are. AI is stepping in to handle all the verbal, computational heavy lifting.
Meaning, ironically, AI is actually forcing humanity to finally undertake the spiritual journey we've been putting off for thousands of years.
Yeah.
If the machine can outthink you, you have no choice but to out-observe it. You have to step out of the machinery of thought and into the space of pure awareness.
So for you listening to this right now, your ultimate value in this rapidly changing world is no longer just in how fast you can process information, write an email, or solve a puzzle.
No, it's not.
Your unique, irreplaceable value lies in your awareness, your consciousness, your ability to step back and observe the machinery of your own mind without being consumed by it.
That is the ultimate evolutionary shift, from human doings to human beings.
What a journey. Let's try to briefly recap the map we just built.
Let's do it.
We started by looking at the finite architecture of our own brains, the perception, abstraction, and biological networks that allow us to adapt to reality.
Right.
Then we zoomed out to see how ancient traditions modeled a cosmic infinite intelligence, asking us to transcend our egos and align with a deeper flow.
From there, we explored how the modern era, through Napoleon Hill and the law of attraction, taught us to hack that connection. We learned how to use focus, emotion, and the reticular activating system to program our subconscious and shape our own realities using words.
And finally, we confronted the AI revolution, the arrival of an artificial infinite intelligence that is mastering those very words, stripping away the dominance of our computational skills, and ultimately pushing humanity toward a necessary age of wisdom.
It is an overwhelming amount to process, but it all points toward a profound transformation in what it means to be human.
It really does.
To leave you with a final provocative thought inspired by Harari's warning. The next time you're sitting in traffic or staring out the window and a word, a judgment, or a sudden urge pops into your head, just pause.
Stop.
Take a deep breath and ask yourself, where did that thought actually come from?
Was it generated by your own finite biological habits? Was it a whisper of intuition from a deeper universal intelligence? Or was it subtly planted there by an algorithm designed to capture your attention and shape your behavior?
And more importantly, when all the thoughts finally stop, who is the you that is sitting there in the silence listening?
We started this deep dive wondering if the mind was just an isolated generator or part of a larger field. As that biological generator gets outpaced by the machines we've built, we are being forced to step into the murky, terrifying, but beautiful waters of true consciousness. Keep questioning the source of your thoughts, keep exploring the silence, and keep observing the space between the words. We'll see you on the next deep dive.